I was 19, working my first retail job at a big store in suburban Ohio. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving, the busiest day of the year. Normally, I spent the morning brewing coffee at home, scrolling through my phone, and slowly waking up before heading to work. But today felt different. I remember walking into the parking lot before sunrise, the air sharp and cold, mist rising off the asphalt. Cars were already lining up, engines humming, their headlights cutting through the gray dawn. Everything looked normal. I grabbed my keys and walked toward the front doors, my backpack slung over one shoulder. My manager waved from inside, unlocking the doors. "Get ready," he said. "It's going to be a long day." I smiled and nodded, thinking about the long line of shoppers and the chaos of Black Friday, but something in the lot caught my attention. Near a row of SUVs at the far edge, there was a man standing completely still. He wasn't moving, just watching. At first, I assumed he was another early shopper waiting for the doors to open. But something didn't feel right. He wasn't checking his phone, he wasn't looking at the cars, and he didn't seem like he was with anyone. He just stayed there, shoulders slightly hunched, hands hidden in a dark hoodie. I felt a chill run through me. I shook my head, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just cold, waiting for the store to open. Maybe he was a regular who liked showing up early. I started walking toward the door, keeping my eyes on the figure from the corner of my vision. Every few steps, I glanced back, and he hadn't moved. Not an inch. That's when I noticed it. His head turned slightly, just enough to follow me. My stomach tightened, and I realized I had never actually seen his face clearly. I walked faster, heart picking up pace, trying to keep it casual. I reminded myself that it was a busy morning, people were everywhere, and probably no one would even notice him once the crowd arrived. Still, a small, creeping sense of unease grew inside me. Something about how still he was, how he was just waiting. It didn't make sense. I reached the front doors and unlocked them, hearing the faint rumble of engines and footsteps behind me. When I glanced back again, he was closer to the lot entrance, still just standing there, as if he had been waiting for me specifically. I told myself I was overthinking it. Black Friday mornings were stressful. People looked weird before coffee. But the feeling didn't leave. Something was off, and deep down I knew it. It was a normal day. A normal store. A normal parking lot. Except for that man. And something told me, even before the doors opened, that I wasn't going to forget him anytime soon. After I unlocked the doors and stepped inside, the store smelled like freshly polished floors and the faint metallic tang of credit card machines. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting an even, sterile glow over the aisles. The early morning quiet was almost eerie, considering what Black Friday usually meant: chaos, crowds, and screaming deals. But for now, it was calm. Too calm. I moved toward the register area to get ready for the incoming rush. My manager, a tall man in his 40s named Greg, was already at his post, counting cash and checking the till. He nodded at me, distracted but polite. "You ready for today?" he asked without looking up. I shrugged, trying to match his casual tone. I was here because I needed extra money, like most of my friends. College tuition didn't pay for itself, and Black Friday shifts were a paycheck boost, even if it meant working before sunrise. The store was large, a typical suburban retail space with wide aisles of electronics, home goods, and seasonal items stacked neatly on shelves. The floor had been mopped the night before, and I could still see the faint streaks of polish in the early light. Everything smelled clean, ordered and normal. There were a few early shoppers milling around, bundled in coats and scarves, clutching their coffee cups as if that would make them move faster through the chaos ahead. I started arranging some display items near the entrance, making sure everything was neat. There was a coworker, Jenna, who was in charge of the electronics section. She waved at me briefly, murmuring, "Morning, is it always this quiet before Black Friday?" I smiled, though uneasily. Usually, this quiet meant nothing, but today it felt different. The clock on the wall ticked toward 6 a.m., the moment when doors would open to the first wave of early shoppers. Outside, the parking lot was still filling up, cars idling, engines humming, headlights sweeping the dark asphalt. I could still see the man from earlier, standing near the far end of the lot. For a moment, I told myself again that I was imagining it. There were probably security cameras. Someone would notice if there was a problem. I moved to check the front display tables one more time, making sure nothing was out of place. The overhead music system played a quiet, generic holiday tune, soft enough to barely register. The store felt almost too normal. Every so often, I would glance at the windows facing the lot, just to see that figure, always in the same spot, still standing, hands in his pockets. I didn't know him, and I didn't know why he was there, but the stillness of him made the morning feel wrong. I shrugged it off and returned to the preparations. I had to focus. Doors were opening soon, and chaos would descend in minutes. Greg moved past me, checking the registers one last time, and Jenna finished adjusting the shelves. Everything seemed normal, like any other Black Friday morning. But beneath the surface, a small knot of unease sat in my chest, growing quietly. Something about today, about that parking lot, didn't feel right. I just didn't know why yet. By the time the doors officially opened, the store had started filling with early shoppers. The chaos was subtle at first. Shoppers quietly comparing price tags, someone muttering to a friend about a deal, a cart rolling slowly down an empty aisle. I tried to focus on my job, holding the doors and greeting people with a smile. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It started with small things. The lights near the electronics section flickered for a second, and I could swear I heard a low scrape against one of the shelves. I told myself it was just a cart being moved. Then I heard footsteps echo from the entrance I had just unlocked. I glanced back, but no one was standing there. The lot outside was still busy, headlights moving, people walking, but the footsteps inside the store didn't match any of them. As the minutes passed, I started noticing other oddities. A shadow moved across the floor near the end of an aisle, but when I turned, no one was there. The air seemed heavier somehow, like the store had grown slightly colder. Even Jenna, who had been checking displays, looked a little uneasy when she passed me. She didn't say anything, just gave a small nervous laugh and hurried on. The man from the parking lot caught my attention again. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, but he had come closer to the entrance, standing behind one of the large pillars near the glass doors. He wasn't moving like a normal shopper, just waiting. I noticed the way he shifted his weight slightly, almost imperceptibly, and it made my stomach tighten. Then there was the sound of breathing. I froze. It wasn't heavy or loud, just faint, so soft that at first I thought it was me, or maybe another customer talking on their phone. But it didn't match anyone around me. I turned my head quickly, scanning the nearby aisles. There was no one, just shelves lined with electronics and the low hum of the overhead lights. I tried to stay calm. Black Friday mornings were hectic, people moved strangely, and it was easy to misinterpret things when you were tired. Still, I couldn't stop glancing toward the entrance, where the man lingered. Every time I looked away, a part of me thought he had moved closer. Every time I looked back, he seemed to have shifted his weight slightly again, just enough to make me doubt my own eyes. It wasn't screaming or chaos that set me on edge. It was the small details, the quiet, the stillness, the way the shadows fell in the corners, the faint scrape or breath that didn't belong. Everything in the store seemed normal, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching, waiting, and planning something I wasn't prepared for. The first signs of real suspense were subtle, almost easy to dismiss. But deep down, I knew the ordinary day was about to change. Something was wrong, and I had no idea how quickly it would get worse. By mid-morning, the store was busier. Shoppers moved quickly from aisle to aisle, carts rattling across the linoleum floors. I was still stationed near the entrance, greeting people, but the sense of unease from earlier had grown heavier. That man from the parking lot was no longer a vague shadow in the distance. He had entered the store, blending in with other early shoppers, but there was something about the way he moved that set him apart. He didn't grab any items or stop to look at shelves. Instead, he walked slowly, deliberately, as if he was scanning the floor for something. Every time I caught sight of him from the corner of my eye, he seemed to pause, just long enough to make me feel seen. I started keeping a mental count of the exits, the layout of the aisles, and where security cameras were positioned. My stomach tightened with every glance. Then the small things started piling up. I noticed footsteps behind me that didn't match anyone nearby, the soft scuffing of shoes on tile that stopped when I turned. I caught glimpses of a dark hoodie and reflections on the glass doors, but whenever I looked directly, no one was there. It was subtle, almost easy to ignore, except it wasn't. My gut screamed that something was very wrong. I felt trapped. The entrance where I had unlocked the doors earlier now seemed farther away than it should. The store had transformed from a normal morning rush to a maze of suspicious movements and shadows. Even Jenna, who was restocking near the electronics section, started glancing nervously toward the front. I wanted to tell her, but I didn't want to panic anyone or draw attention. And I wasn't even sure what I could say without sounding paranoid. He moved closer. I saw it clearly this time. A man in his mid-30s, dark hair peeking from under the hoodie, hands partially hidden in his pockets.
He wasn't shopping.
He was lingering, almost stalking the flow of people through the entrance. The way he shifted his weight, the deliberate pauses, the careful steps between carts, it all made my heart race. I could no longer convince myself he was just a confused customer. Every instinct screamed at me. Something about him was deliberate, calculating. I began subtly shifting my position, trying to keep him in my line of sight without letting him notice. Every time a shopper blocked my view, I tensed. He could be anywhere. And the more I looked, the more I realized he had been tracking me, his movements eerily aligned with mine across the store. The sense of danger was now undeniable. The ordinary chaos of Black Friday, the noise of chatter and cartwheels, did nothing to mask the quiet threat that had entered my space. I could feel it pressing in from all sides, like the normal store was suddenly a trap. I tried to remind myself to stay calm, stay friendly, stay professional. But deep down, I knew he wasn't there for bargains, and I had no idea what he wanted. It happened in the electronics aisle. I was straightening a display of laptops when I felt him just a few feet behind me. At first, I froze, hoping I was imagining it. Then I saw it clearly, his dark hoodie, the glint of something metallic in his hand, partially hidden in his pocket. My heart skipped. This wasn't a shopper. This was deliberate. He stepped closer, moving slowly but purposefully. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes flicked from me to the doors and back again. I swallowed hard, trying to stay calm, but my hands shook as I picked up a laptop to pretend I was busy. I couldn't call out for help. The nearest coworker was on the other side of the store, and the chaos of early shoppers could drown any sound. I edged toward the aisle's end, thinking about escape routes, calculating where I could run and where I could hide. My mind raced. If he wanted to confront me, I had to be ready, but there was nowhere to hide in this open space. Every step I took made the hairs on my neck stand on end. Then he spoke, softly, almost casually. "Hey." That single word made my chest tighten. My pulse surged. He didn't say anything else, just kept moving toward me, and I realized I had no choice. I couldn't stay. I bolted. I ran past the displays, knocking over a few boxes in my panic. Shoppers screamed and scattered, but I didn't stop. The man followed, quick and silent, weaving between carts like he belonged there. I turned a corner into the backroom, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My breathing was ragged, my heart pounding like a drum. The backroom was dark, lined with shelves and boxes. I crouched behind one, clutching my phone and dialing 911. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped it. I could hear him moving outside, soft scraping footsteps against the concrete floor, stopping whenever I shifted. It was as if he was waiting for me to make a mistake. Minutes felt like hours. I whispered my location to the dispatcher, keeping my voice low. The man's presence was tangible even through the door. Then I heard the handle jiggle. He had tried the door. I pressed myself flat against the floor, barely daring to breathe. My mind raced through every escape plan I had considered, every route I could take once help arrived. Finally, I heard sirens. Security had called the police. The dispatcher instructed me to stay put. Footsteps ran past the door. Then silence. When officers arrived, I unlocked the door and stepped out. The store was back to chaos, shoppers still moving, oblivious. Security cameras later showed him crouched in an aisle near the entrance before I ran, hidden, waiting, patient. He hadn't been a random shopper. He had planned it. Even with the officers there, I couldn't shake the feeling that the man had been everywhere at once, tracking me through the store. He hadn't been caught yet, and the thought that he could come back, just as silently, made the normal store feel dangerous all over again. The police finished their sweep of the store while I watched from the back room. They asked me questions over and over: what I saw, what he looked like, what he was doing. I told them everything I remembered. The dark hoodie, the way he moved, the metal glint I had seen in his hand. Later, they reviewed the security footage. At first, I thought it would just confirm what I had seen: the man lurking, following me, hiding in the aisles. But what I saw on the screen made my stomach drop. He hadn't just been following me. He had been hiding in plain sight, not just for a few minutes, but for over an hour before the doors even opened. There were shots of him, crouched behind displays in the stockroom, peeking around corners, waiting. He knew exactly where I would be, how I would move, and how the store's layout would leave me vulnerable. The more I watched, the worse it got. The video showed him near the entrance, slipping past early shoppers without anyone noticing, ducking behind carts, adjusting his hoodie to blend in. Every action was careful, deliberate. He hadn't been there for deals, and he wasn't random. He had planned it. Then came the part that made my chest tighten. Security cameras caught a moment I hadn't realized during the chaos. He wasn't just following me for the thrill. He had brought a small backpack with him, hidden under his hoodie. Inside, the footage revealed, was a crowbar, probably the same one I had glimpsed in his hand during our encounter. He had been ready to act the moment the store was empty enough, the moment he thought he had control. I realized something else. The way he had moved in and out of sight, the way he had paused and observed, it wasn't just stalking. It was reconnaissance. He had been inside the store multiple times before, watching, memorizing. And the idea that this could happen again, or that he had been doing it before without anyone noticing, made my blood run cold. The police told me that they had found partial fingerprints near the back, but no full ID. He had vanished before they could arrive, leaving no trace except the camera footage and the shaken employees. It hit me then, this wasn't a random encounter. He had studied the store, studied me, and he had almost gotten exactly what he wanted. The final shocking part was simple, but terrifying. The man hadn't just been dangerous because he was close. He had been patient, precise, and invisible. The whole time I thought I had a chance to escape by luck or timing, he had been one step ahead. That small detail changed everything. I walked home that evening, my hands still trembling, the normal streets feeling suddenly unsafe. I kept thinking about the footage, about how quiet he had been, how methodical. The twist wasn't just that he had been there. I realized that, in a way, he could be anywhere, observing, waiting, and I wouldn't know until it was too late. Days passed, and the store returned to normal. Shoppers came and went, deals were claimed, and the chaos of Black Friday faded into the routine of December. I went back to work, trying to act as if nothing had happened. My co-workers were relieved, joking about the morning, and my manager assured me the police had done everything they could. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept thinking about the man, about the way he had moved silently through the store, watching, waiting. The footage replayed in my mind constantly, him crouched behind displays, blending into the shadows, a glint of metal in his hand. I had survived that day by luck, by timing, by being alert, but what if someone else wasn't so lucky? What if he returned, just as patient, just as deliberate? I started noticing small things everywhere. A shadow in a parking lot that lingered too long, a car slowly following me on the way home, someone walking just a little too close behind me in the grocery store. Every small sound, every glance, made my heart race. It was as if the memory of him had left a permanent mark on the way I saw the world. The police never caught him. They told me to stay alert, to report anything unusual, but the truth was worse than that. I knew he could be anywhere. The surveillance footage had proven he was patient, careful, and capable of disappearing without a trace. The thought that he might still be out there, somewhere, planning or waiting for the next opportunity, was impossible to ignore. Some nights, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that morning. The ordinary chaos of shoppers, the sound of carts rolling down aisles, the smell of fresh coffee and electronics, it all feels haunted now. And I can't help but wonder if, even now, he's watching some other store, some other employee, doing the same thing he did to me. The terrifying part is that he could be anywhere, invisible to everyone except the person who notices him at the wrong moment. I've never seen him since that day, but I still think about him. The unease hasn't faded. Sometimes, when I walk past the store parking lot, I swear I see a dark hoodie in the distance, standing still, waiting. And I can't tell if it's my imagination or him. The thought is always there, lingering. A quiet reminder that what happened wasn't random. That a normal day, a normal store, a normal job can become something dangerous in an instant. I survived, but the question that haunts me every time I pass a store, every time I hear footsteps behind me, is simple. Will I recognize him the next time, or will it be too late? And maybe the worst part is this. I don't know if he's gone at all. Days passed, and the store slowly returned to its normal rhythm. Shoppers came and went, carts rattled along aisles, and employees joked about how hectic Black Friday had been. My manager reassured me that the police had done everything they could. They reviewed the footage, they swept the parking lot, and they told me to stay alert. Everyone acted like it was over, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't. Every time I walked past the front entrance, I remembered him. The dark hoodie, the careful pauses, the way he had seemed to anticipate my movements. Even in the footage, it wasn't just stalking, it was patient, methodical, almost rehearsed. The thought that he had waited, hidden, watching me so closely before I even arrived filled me with a cold, heavy unease. I had survived. By luck, timing, and instinct, but that didn't make me feel safe. It only made me realize how close I had come to something far worse. I started noticing little things everywhere. A shadow lingering just a little too long in a parking lot. A car driving slowly behind me on the way home. Someone walking in the grocery store aisle who suddenly seemed to appear behind me for no reason. My nerves became tense almost constantly. Every small sound, every glance over my shoulder, set off a warning bell in my mind. I found myself hyper-aware of entrances, exits, and even the placement of display shelves. Even the store itself felt different. The aisles that had seemed ordinary during the morning rush now felt narrower, darker, and unpredictable. The hum of the fluorescent lights no longer felt comforting. It felt like it could conceal something. Every time I stepped into the electronics section, I remembered the glint of metal in his hand, and my pulse quickened. The ordinary chaos of shoppers became a reminder of what could happen when someone like him strikes. Some nights, lying awake, I replay the entire morning in my head. The quiet before the doors opened, the way he had moved silently between cars and displays, the sound of soft scuffing footsteps echoing just out of reach. I can't stop thinking about how methodical he was. Every pause, every glance, every tiny shift of weight was calculated. And that precision terrifies me more than anything else, the idea that he had thought it through and could do it again anywhere. I still haven't seen him since that day, but the memory follows me. Even simple things trigger it. A flash of movement in a dark parking lot, someone standing too still in a corner, a hoodie that looks too large and out of place. I start imagining him everywhere, watching, waiting, planning. And then I remind myself, it's not imagination. The footage proved he can disappear in plain sight. He knows how to blend in,